Hello, everyone, and welcome to week 5. This week we're going to talk about, we're kind of skip around a little bit. We're going to go right into chapter 7, which is storage devices. And then we're going to we're going to skip 8 and 9 for now, and we're going to go over, and 10. We're going to go over 11, talk about basic operating systems. So I kind of want to get a little bit involved with that. So some of the stuff that we're going to learn, I'm just going to tell you that, it's not really being utilized that often. So, for example, Chapter 7, Objectives, how to install a floppy drive. Well, not really going to go over that. We could talk about it a little bit, but it's something that you probably, I'd say 90% of the chance, aren't going to do. There may be some very older machines that still have floppy drives, and maybe they need to get data off of it, whatever the case is. For a while there, like maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, they were at that time, computers quit coming with floppy drives. They were coming as you could get as an external device, and they started doing that not too long ago with the. Hold on, my Siri is going off. Apologize, Siri thought I was trying to tell her how to do something. They started doing with the CD-ROM drives and the DVD-ROM drives, and now, like, I have a MacBook Pro and it doesn't even have a CD-ROM drive or a DVD drive at all. And a matter of fact, it doesn't even have an Ethernet port on it at all. So everything is changed. I mean, it has a solid state drive on it, but it doesn't have some of the basic functions that we're used to getting. Another thing we'll talk about basic hard drive terms. We'll talk about IDE, SCSI, PATA, SATA, etc. How to configure storage devices, how to fix storage device problems, how to keep the hard drive healthy, and effective communication. So, kind of get started here. Like I said, the best thing to do is kind of take notes because I'll kind of skim through this a little bit. I don't have anything really prepared this week for Chapter 7 or anything on paper. So some of the storage devices that are very popular, and like I said, there's a lot of things that have changed in the most recent years. So if you have a video camera or a camera like a Canon or a Fuji or whatever the case is, you'll know that most of the cameras take a specific SD memory card. Most of them use the same ones, except I will tell you that if you're using a Sony one, Sony uses something totally different than all the other devices. They have their own thing. So kind of I learned a long time ago because I was a big proponent of purchasing Sony computers, or I'm sorry, Sony cameras, and so Sony likes to be their own. They like to be different. Another one is, if you look in illustration 7.1 on page 250 of your book, you'll see the floppy disk. So hopefully some of you have used the floppy disk. Probably back in let me think about the year, around 1989, 1990, around that time frame. I'd say probably more 92, 93, something like that. Sony had a camera out, and it was a camera that used a floppy drive, which I thought was like awesome. I was like, wow, this is great. So, but imagine it's 3.5 inches. It takes a floppy drive, and it can only save so many pictures. And then later on, I bought in 2001, I bought a Sony camera that took a 3-inch CD that wrote pictures to the CD, which was, at the time, I think it was very expensive. It was like $1,100 for a camera, and this is like 15 years ago or so. But the thing is, sometimes the CD drive would not work properly, and it would not save the images to the device, or it would wipe them out. And eventually, it took a lot of cleaning, and I just kind of got away from that. I went to the what was the next method was the memory card, the SD card. So I got involved with that, and that's kind of how cameras are now. Now they have, I'm not sure if you know this, but they have memory cards that have Wi-Fi built into it. So you can have a memory card, and it just goes off a Wi-Fi signal. It allows you to transfer the pictures to, such as your camera, your phone, I'm sorry, your Android device, your iPhone device, Windows phone, your tablets, etc. So they make it so easy. But then there's that vulnerability again, because it's not like in our generation, it's like we need things like as quick as possible. In the old days, we'd go and hook up a wire to a computer, transfer the images, whatever the case is. That's great that it's available, but there's also vulnerability. If you have private pictures that that you don't want people to have, maybe private pictures of your family and stuff like that, well, then that's something you have to think about. There's a floppy drive, the bigger one, the 5.75 floppy disk, which was very popular. I think it came out in the early 80s. When I was in grade school in the 80s, this was very popular in all the computers that we had in school, because a lot of the computers, the Apple IIc computers and so forth, use this device, and this has been distinct for years. We have the CD-ROM up in the top right corner, or the DVD drive, which around 97, the CD drive, you were able to burn stuff to the CD, was very popular at that time, and eventually it kind of died out. And the thing is, the more modern things are these little thumb drives or these flash drives. That's kind of the direction that the technology itself is going in. Let's see here. If floppy drive installation. So we're not going to really talk about the floppy drive installation, but real quick, the floppy drive installation. So if you have a tower computer, let me see if I can pull up something up here. I'll kind of give you an example. Let's see here. Floppy. Oops. Nice if I could type floppy disk on tower. See if I can find an example. So talking about it. Okay. So I try to pull up an image on Google Image, and this guy right here has a floppy disk, and it's kind of, the image is kind of, oh, okay, it's gotten better. So this right here is your floppy disk. How it would be installed is, if you look on page 253 of your book, there is a connector, and as you notice, the connector has these pins. These pins would easily slide. Depends on the amount of pins. They would easily slide into the back of the floppy drive, and then you would take the other part of it, which is you see there, it says the twist there. It says attaches to the floppy drive. It's black, but the other end would attach to the computer, the motherboard itself. So you had a slot on a motherboard that allowed you to connect that. So that was the same way with the CD-ROM. But sometimes what would happen is there would be only one, depending on the type of motherboard you have, there would be one slot on there. So what would happen is, if you look at the pin connector there on page 253, that right there would connect to the CD-ROM itself. So you would have this one cable that connected to the CD-ROM and connected to the floppy drive, and then connected to the motherboard, or vice versa. You can have the same thing as the, this is interesting because I think I had this computer a long time ago, looking at it, but you would also have the same thing with the hard drive as well. So that would be what the floppy drive cable is used for. It's still used now. If I did floppy drive cable, give me a second here, I'll get you a sample. Oh, motherboard. This would be perfect example. Alright, this is actually excellent example here. So as you see here on this IDE drive here, we have the secondary IDE, the primary. So the primary is whatever primary is usually your hard drive. So you plug your hard drive into this, because primary means that when it loads up, that's where you want things that happen off the hard drive versus a disk. And then your secondary would be your CD-ROM. So you see here there's three IDEs. So back in the day, they would have maybe a CD-ROM and maybe a DVD drive, or maybe you have two DVD drives potentially, and maybe you don't have enough room. So that's where you want to connect that, use that cable connector, so that you're able to provide that information. Kind of getting over to the hard drive, if you turn over to 255 on the hard drive geometric, so it shows you how the plates and with the cylinder. So the hard drive surface is a metallic, and concentrated with circles. So each of which is called tracks. So these tracks are outermost tracks, but they're basically called from track 0 to a higher number. But as you see, all they are is plates. They look like 3 CD plates in a case, in a sense. And the information is saved on these certain sectors. So there's like little sectors within the drive that you don't really see. Each sector has an X amount of bytes in it, and it saves information. Now, what's interesting is, let's say that you have a drive, and okay, you know what? Guess what? You formatted it by accident, or someone formatted it on purpose. You can still get that information back on that drive. There's a lot of programs out there that allows you to kind of, as long as it hasn't been wiped out, it's still there somewhere, and it could be found. Let's see here. Kind of skipping around here, just checking out what is important. Well, let's see here. All right, if you look over on page 257, it shows you in figure 7.11, talks about the installation of a 2.5-inch hard drive. These hard drives are more or less for your laptops. They're very easy to install on most devices, such as if you're installing on an Apple computer, if you're installing it on a let's see here. Let me find an example for us. All right, so I pulled up a video on YouTube here on how to install an IDE hard drive. This would be great if this class was in person, or if I had a computer to do it myself to show you. It would be a perfect example. So let me see if I can hit play on here. Show you what this guy's doing. So he right now has the hard drive in this slot, and as you see here, these guys right here, I'll pause it. These are your jumper cables. This is your IDE port, so that's for your the ribbon right there that will be plugged into that. And this is right here is the power supply. So on the back of your tower, you have a power supply runs down. It has all these cables. That connector from that power supply will be plugged into here, because there's another supply going into the board itself. So go ahead and hit play and see what he does. Because what you have to do here is, you see this little slot. This is very important. You can't see it from here, but on the back layer here, it tells you which one is the primary IDE and the secondary. So if you remember before, we talked about in the motherboard, there was the primary IDE, secondary, and so forth. So it's very important. Let's say this right here is a hard drive. When we have this set up on the operating system, the BIOS, we have the hard drive is our IDE1 drive, which is our primary. Our IDE2 drive, which is our secondary, is our CD-ROM. And let's say that our third one is our floppy disk. What would happen here is we'd have to put this jumper to primary so that it knows it's the primary. If it's not in the primary, when it boots up, it won't know where to boot up at. So that's what he's doing right there. Alright, so he's hitting play. Let's see what he does. I'm kind of fast forwarding a little bit here. Alright, so now he's got the power supply, as you see. He's going to plug it into the power support. There he goes. Now it looks like he's getting ready to fitting it down. Putting his cables in there. Now, there he goes. He's going to put that right into that device. And there's different connectors. There's an 80 and a 40 conductor cable. So the 40 pin is for your IDE hard drives, and different drives support different ones. So you can find that also on page 260. As you see, he plugged that in, and now it's ready to go. And that's pretty much it right there on that part of it. Like I said, I wish I had some more information to show you in person. Let's see here. All right, getting back to talking about the different hard drives that there are. Let's see here. So, talking about that, interfaces. These right here is your different abbreviations for your hard drive interfaces. So you have a, as you see, there's a bunch of different drives. There's the IDE, integrated drive electronics. Remember these. This might be on, see it on a test. Your ATA attachment, SCSI, small computer system interface, very popular one. Your PATA, your parallel IDE, your SATA, serial ATA. All these different ones are different types of hard drives, and then the most recent one is a solid state drive. So what these basically mean is the amount of pins that you have that gets plugged in. Popular ones was IDE, integrated drive electronics, SCSI, your SCSI, your SAS is popular, and your SATA. Those are the really popular ones that you've seen. The other ones are far and in between, and then obviously more modern now, everyone's doing the solid state drive, which is basically a chip that's on your board, so you have more room in your computer system, which is kind of nice. Those are more or less your important ones. We talked about the master drive. The other thing I meant to mention is when I was talking about when the gentleman was setting up the drive, he had to do primary. There's also something called slave. So the slave is like the secondary part of it. This right here kind of gives you a description of where everything's stored at. Where's your drive stored at, your CD drive, and so forth. Partitioning a hard drive allows the drive to load. Alright, so partitioning a hard drive, what is that? So think about this. You have, let me kind of pull something up here. I gotta draw something out a little bit. Not sure if let's do, alright, so let's say that we have this hard drive, okay? And let's see here. This right here is the total size of the hard drive, which is, we'll say, pretty big hard drive, 1 terabyte drive, disk space. And it is, what drive is it? Drive letter for PC. We'll say it's our C drive, which is pretty much a common drive, okay? Let's say that we wanted to partition the drive. Well, first of all, what does partition mean? Well, partition is when you take an allocated amount of space on the disk drive, and mount it somewhere else. So a good example is you have that disk space up here, which is our total space. And let's say that we want to partition it. We want to maybe set up another amount, just a smaller portion of it, and we want to use it for something else. Say, let's say that we have a database system, okay? And we want to use this one right here for our logs, which is our database logs. Oh, it'd be nice if I could spell. Okay. So what we do here is we might split it up. And let's say that, you know, we give that log 200 gigabytes of space. Now we're like, hey, you know what? We have that. Now we need something for our MDF, which is our database, actual database itself. So then we're like, you know what? We're going to set that one up, and we're going to make that one 500 gigabytes. Well, let's say 250. Let me think. Yeah, 250. Now we give it a different letter. So say we assign this one to F, and we assign this one to L. So F is our disk space for our MDF files. This right here is our LDF files for our log files. So that means that we've used 450, and then we have the C drive, which will be the difference of it. So like I said, we have a 200 gig, we have a 250, that gives us 450, and then minus a terabyte allows what, 550 gigabytes left. Well, you need at least half of what you have. So basically what it means is you have 50 gigabytes left. Because let's say that we wanted to do a backup on here, we need at least a double amount of space on it. If we needed to do say that we needed to do can't think of the word I'm looking for. Oh, geez. Basically a rewind of the system. If we needed to go backwards and grab a drive that had previous information on that we lost, we need at least half of what you have. So this would be partitioning. You're able to save small amounts. You can set up small drives and so forth. It's kind of like a virtual server. A virtual server, in a sense, is a single server, a single box that has X amount of disk space and memory. And that is broken down into multiple virtual environments. And how that's done is the drives are partitioned. So to give you an example, it might work. We have a shared database server. Okay, in a shared database server, we have, I don't know, we might have 20 applications on that one virtual environment, but that virtual environment has 8 environments. The one server that we're using is like a $50,000, it's probably about $20,000 Dell server, and we have 4 terabytes disk space on the drive, and we can expand the memory up to, I think it's like 120 some terabyte, or not terabyte, 120 some gigabyte, wrong thing. And anyways, however that's allocated is each environment has a certain amount of space, but that's just one server, and it kind of breaks it down, but it all works off of partitioning. Alright, so I've talked a little bit about partitioning. The other thing is the file system types. Very important. You'll learn about on page 284. Read about the different ones. There's the NTFS, there's FAT32 and FAT. You'll see that each one has something different. They mean something completely different based off of the operating system that you're utilizing. And it's also based off the cluster size and so forth. Read on 290 about the window disk management. Something very important to stay on top with. Let's see here. In a nutshell, that's pretty much, in a nutshell, Chapter 7 about storage devices. If there's something in there that you have a question about and I didn't talk about and you need some more information on it, please let me know and we'll discuss. Thanks for listening. Good day.